The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floor as 28-year-old Ronda Rousey stepped through the mahogany doors of Le Jardin, the upscale French restaurant nestled in Beverly Hills. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore dark jeans with a casual blazer, nothing that screamed wealth or status. The hostess barely glanced up from her reservation book, clearly unimpressed by what she perceived as another underdressed walk-in. "Excuse me, do you have a reservation?" the hostess asked with barely concealed disdain, her eyes scanning Ronda from head to toe. "Actually, I don't need one," Ronda replied calmly, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made her a champion in the octagon. The hostess's eyebrows shot up. "I'm sorry, but we're completely booked tonight. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the diner down the street." Ronda smiled, choosing not to reveal that she owned this very establishment, a secret investment she'd made after retiring from mixed martial arts. She wanted to experience her restaurant as a regular customer would, to see how her staff truly treated people. "I'll just wait at the bar then," Ronda said, making her way toward the elegant mahogany bar that overlooked the main dining room. The bartender, a young man named Marcus with slicked back hair and an attitude to match, looked up with obvious irritation. "What can I get you?" he asked, his tone suggesting he'd rather be anywhere else. "I'll have a glass of your house red wine, please." Marcus rolled his eyes. "The house wine is $35 a glass. You sure you can afford that?" Ronda's jaw tightened slightly, but she maintained her composure. "I think I can manage." As Marcus reluctantly poured the wine, splashing it carelessly into the glass, Ronda observed the restaurant she'd poured her heart and savings into. The dining room buzzed with conversation from well-dressed patrons, the kitchen operated with precision, and the ambiance was exactly what she'd envisioned. Everything was perfect except for the staff's treatment of customers they deemed unworthy. "Here," Marcus said, sliding the wine across the bar with such force that it nearly spilled. "That'll be $35. Ronda handed him her credit card, watching as he processed the payment with exaggerated sighs and eye rolls. She noticed how differently he treated the couple next to her, a man in an expensive suit and a woman dripping in diamonds. Marcus was all smiles and charm with them, offering complimentary appetizers and engaging in pleasant conversation. "Is there anything else you need?" Marcus asked Ronda, his tone making it clear he hoped the answer was no. "Actually, yes. I'd like to speak with your manager." Marcus's face twisted into a smirk. "Look, lady, if you're planning to complain about the prices, save your breath. This isn't McDonald's. Maybe you should stick to places more in your price range." The couple at the bar turned to stare, and Ronda felt the familiar fire that had fueled her fighting career begin to burn in her chest. But she remained calm, knowing that patience would serve her better than anger. "I'm not complaining about the prices," she said evenly. "I just want to speak with the manager." "Fine," Marcus huffed, pulling out his phone. "Hey, Sarah. Yeah, there's some woman at the bar who wants to talk to you. No, I don't know what about. She looks like she wandered in from the street." Within minutes, Sarah Martinez, the restaurant manager, approached the bar. She was a sharp-dressed woman in her 40s with kind eyes that immediately assessed the situation. "Good evening. I'm Sarah, the manager. How can I help you tonight?" "Hi, Sarah," Ronda said, extending her hand. "I was hoping to get a table for dinner." Sarah glanced at Marcus, who shrugged dismissively. "I'm so sorry, but we're completely booked tonight. However, I'd be happy to put you on our waiting list for tomorrow evening." "That's very kind of you," Ronda replied, genuinely appreciating Sarah's professional demeanor. "But I was wondering if there might be any cancellations tonight." Marcus scoffed loudly. "Lady, this isn't the kind of place where people just cancel. These reservations are made weeks in advance by people who actually belong here." Sarah shot Marcus a warning look, but the damage was done. The entire bar area had gone quiet, with other patrons now openly staring at the unfolding drama. "I apologize for my colleague's behavior," Sarah said quickly. "Let me check our system again." As Sarah pulled up the reservation system on her tablet, Rhonda noticed a familiar face entering the restaurant. It was David Chen, her business partner, and the only person besides her lawyer who knew about her ownership of Le Jardin. David spotted her immediately and began walking over with a concerned expression. "Marcus," Sarah said firmly, "why don't you take your break now?" "But I just started my shift," Marcus protested. "Now," Sarah repeated, her voice leaving no room for argument. Marcus grabbed his apron and stormed toward the back of the restaurant, muttering under his breath about difficult customers and their unrealistic expectations. David reached the bar just as Marcus disappeared into the kitchen. "Rhonda," he said, his voice carrying a mix of surprise and concern. "What are you doing here?" The question hung in the air, and Rhonda could see the confusion in Sarah's eyes as she tried to piece together why this casually dressed woman would know David Chen, one of the restaurant's most important investors. "Just having a drink," Rhonda replied, taking a sip of her wine. "David, I'd like you to meet Sarah, your manager. Sarah, this is David Chen." Sarah's face went pale as recognition dawned. David Chen was listed as one of the primary contacts for the restaurant's ownership group, though the actual owner's identity had always been kept confidential. "Mr. Chen," Sarah stammered, "it's an honor to meet you. I had no idea you were coming in tonight." "Neither did I," David replied, his eyes never leaving Rhonda's face. "I was just in the neighborhood and saw a familiar face through the window." The tension in the air was palpable as Sarah began to realize that this casual encounter was anything but coincidental. The woman she'd just witnessed being insulted by her bartender clearly had some connection to the restaurant's ownership. "Sarah," Rhonda said quietly, "could you tell me about your hiring process for front-of-house staff?" "Of course," Sarah replied, though her voice was shaky. "We conduct thorough interviews, check references, and provide extensive training on customer service standards." "And what are those standards exactly?" Sarah straightened, falling back on her professional training. "Every guest should be treated with respect and courtesy, regardless of their appearance or perceived economic status. We pride ourselves on creating an inclusive, welcoming environment for all patrons." "That's interesting," Rhonda mused, swirling her wine. "Because that's not exactly the experience I've had tonight." David placed his hand on Rhonda's shoulder. "What happened?" Before Rhonda could answer, Marcus returned from his break, apparently unaware that anything had changed. He saw David and immediately switched to his charming persona. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Le Jardin. Can I get you something to drink? Perhaps our finest champagne?" The contrast between Marcus's treatment of David and his earlier behavior toward Rhonda was so stark that even other patrons began to take notice. Whispers started circulating throughout the bar area as people sensed drama unfolding. "Actually," David said slowly, "I think you owe this lady an apology." Marcus looked confused. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't understand. I was just doing my job, maintaining the standards of this establishment, by insulting customers." David's voice carried an edge that made Marcus take a step back. "I wasn't insulting anyone," Marcus protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "I was simply explaining our policies to someone who clearly doesn't understand the caliber of clientele we serve." The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Rhonda could see Sarah's face growing more horrified by the second. Other staff members had begun to gather, sensing that something significant was happening. "Marcus," Sarah said urgently, "perhaps you should apologize to the lady." "For what?" Marcus demanded, his arrogance overriding any sense of self-preservation. "For maintaining standards, for protecting the reputation of this restaurant. I've done nothing wrong." Rhonda set down her wineglass and stood up slowly. The movement was fluid and controlled, reminiscent of her days in the octagon when she would rise to face an opponent. Every eye in the bar area was now focused on her. "You know what, Marcus?" she said, her voice calm, but carrying an unmistakable authority. "You're absolutely right about one thing. This restaurant does have standards." She paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "The question is whether you meet them." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the kitchen noise seemed to fade as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Marcus looked around nervously, finally beginning to sense that he might have made a serious mistake. "I don't understand what's happening here," Marcus said, his voice now uncertain. "Who are you people?" David smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "That's an excellent question, Marcus. Sarah, would you like to do the honors?" Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor, but she knew there was no escape from this moment. The truth was about to come out, and Marcus's fate hung in the balance. If you're enjoying this story and want to see how this confrontation unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, telling us what you think Marcus's reaction will be when he discovers the truth. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. The restaurant's ambient lighting seemed to dim as all attention focused on Sarah, who was clearly struggling with how to handle the revelation that was about to change everything. Marcus stood behind the bar, his earlier confidence evaporating as he began to realize that the woman he'd been insulting might be far more important than he'd assumed. "Sarah," Ronda said gently, "it's okay. The truth has a way of coming out eventually." Sarah took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she faced Marcus. "Marcus, I need you to understand something very important about our restaurant." What are you talking about?" Marcus demanded, though his voice had lost its earlier arrogance. "It's just a restaurant. We serve food to rich people. What's the big mystery?" David stepped forward, his expression serious. "The mystery, Marcus, is that you've been incredibly rude to someone who has every right to be here." "Look, I don't know who you think you are," Marcus said, pointing at Ronda, "but I was just doing my job. This place has a reputation to maintain, and part of that means making sure the right kind of people feel comfortable here." "The right kind of people," Ronda repeated, her eyebrows rising. "And what kind of people would those be?" Marcus gestured around the dining room. "You know, successful people, people who can afford to eat here without checking their bank account, people who understand fine dining and dress appropriately for the occasion." "I see," Ronda said, nodding thoughtfully. "So you judge people's worth based on their clothing and appearance?" "It's not about judging," Marcus protested, though he was clearly becoming more defensive. "It's about maintaining an atmosphere. When people see someone dressed like—" he gestured at Ronda's casual attire, "like that, it affects their dining experience." Sarah closed her eyes, knowing that Marcus was digging himself deeper with every word. The other staff members who had gathered were exchanging worried glances, sensing that their colleague was about to face serious consequences. "Marcus," Sarah said urgently, "please stop talking." But Marcus was too caught up in defending his position to heed the warning. "No, Sarah, I think this needs to be said. We work hard to create a certain ambiance here, and part of that means being selective about who we serve. I was protecting the restaurant's reputation." "By insulting customers?" David asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "By maintaining standards," Marcus insisted. "Look, I'm sorry if her feelings got hurt, but sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. This isn't the kind of place where someone in jeans and sneakers should expect to be treated like royalty." Ronda looked down at her feet, noting that she was actually wearing designer flats, not sneakers, but she decided not to correct him. Instead, she turned to Sarah. "How long has Marcus worked here?" "About 6 months," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And in those 6 months, how many complaints have you received about his customer service?" Sarah hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "There have been a few incidents." "A few," Marcus scoffed. I've had maybe one or two difficult customers who couldn't handle being told the truth about our policies. Actually, Sarah said quietly, there have been 7 formal complaints in the past 3 months. The number hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus's face went red as he realized that his behavior had been documented and reported multiple times. Those were all misunderstandings, he said quickly. People who didn't understand our standards or who were trying to cause trouble. Or, Ronda suggested, people who were treated poorly by someone who thinks he has the right to judge others based on their appearance. Marcus turned to face her directly, his frustration finally boiling over. You know what? I don't care who you think you are or who your friend is. I stand by what I did tonight. You walked in here looking like you couldn't afford an appetizer, and I treated you accordingly. If you don't like it, there are plenty of other restaurants in this city. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sounds from the kitchen had stopped, as if the entire restaurant was holding its breath. Ronda looked around at the faces surrounding her, Sarah's horrified expression, David's barely contained anger, and the shocked stares of the other staff members. You're absolutely right, Marcus, Ronda said finally. There are plenty of other restaurants in this city. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, placing it on the bar in front of him. Marcus glanced down at it, and his face went completely white. The card was simple and elegant, with embossed lettering that read, Ronda Rousey, owner, Le Jardin Restaurant Group. Marcus stared at the card for a long moment, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He looked up at Ronda, then at David, then back at the card, as if hoping it would somehow change or disappear. This is a joke, he whispered. This has to be a joke. I'm afraid it's not, David said, his voice carrying a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. Marcus, meet your boss. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stumbled backward, knocking over a glass that shattered on the floor behind the bar. The sound seemed to break the spell that had fallen over the restaurant, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. I don't understand, Marcus stammered. You're the owner? But you're so young and you're dressed like... Like what, Marcus? Ronda asked, her voice still calm but carrying an unmistakable authority. Like someone who doesn't deserve basic respect and courtesy. Marcus's hands were shaking now as the full implications of his behavior began to sink in. He had spent the entire evening insulting and dismissing the person who owned the restaurant, who paid his salary, who had the power to end his career with a single word. I didn't know, he said weakly. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know, Ronda replied. That was the point. I wanted to see how my staff treats customers when they think no one important is watching. Sarah stepped forward, her face pale but determined. Ronda, I want you to know that Marcus's behavior tonight does not reflect the values we've tried to instill in our team. This is completely unacceptable. I know it doesn't reflect your values, Sarah, Ronda said kindly. I've been watching this restaurant for months, and I know you run a tight ship, but clearly there are some gaps in our customer service training. Marcus was now frantically trying to salvage the situation. Ms. Rousey, please, I can explain. I was just trying to protect the restaurant's reputation. I thought I was doing the right thing. By judging people based on their appearance? Ronda asked. By making assumptions about their worth based on their clothing? By treating them with disrespect and contempt? I made a mistake, Marcus pleaded. A huge mistake. But I can learn from this. I can do better. Ronda studied him for a long moment, weighing his words against his actions. Around them, the restaurant had returned to a semblance of normalcy, though she could feel the eyes of staff and patrons alike watching the drama unfold. Marcus, she said finally, can you tell me what you think the most important quality is for someone working in customer service? Marcus thought frantically, knowing that his answer could determine his fate. Excellence, he ventured. Attention to detail, knowledge of the menu. Those are all important, Ronda agreed. But they're not the most important thing. She paused, letting him think about it. The most important quality is respect. Respect for every person who walks through that door, regardless of how they look, how they're dressed, or how much money you think they have. Because you never know who someone really is, or what their story might be. Marcus nodded eagerly, though Ronda could see that he was still more focused on saving his job than truly understanding the lesson. "I understand now," he said quickly. "I really do. And I promise, if you give me another chance, I'll never make this mistake again." Ronda looked around the restaurant, taking in the faces of her employees, the elegant dining room she'd worked so hard to create, and the customers who trusted her establishment to provide them with an exceptional experience. "The thing is, Marcus," she said slowly, "this isn't just about one mistake. Sarah mentioned 7 complaints in 3 months. That suggests a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident." Marcus's face crumpled as he realized that his past actions were coming back to haunt him. "Those other times were different," he protested weakly. "I can explain each one." "I'm sure you can," Ronda said, "but the question isn't whether you can explain them. The question is whether our customers should have to endure poor treatment while you figure out how to do your job properly." The weight of her words settled over the group like a heavy blanket. Marcus looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would come to his defense, but the other staff members avoided his gaze. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Ronda took a sip of her wine, considering her options. She could fire him on the spot, which would certainly send a message to the rest of her staff about the importance of customer service. Or she could use this as a teaching moment, an opportunity to demonstrate both accountability and redemption. The decision would not only affect Marcus's future, but also set the tone for how her restaurant operated going forward. Every employee was watching, waiting to see what kind of leader she truly was. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as Ronda contemplated Marcus's fate. She could see the fear in his eyes, the desperation of someone who knew they had crossed a line they couldn't uncross. But she could also see something else, the watching eyes of every other employee in the restaurant, all waiting to see what kind of leader she truly was. "Marcus," she said finally, "I want you to do something for me." "Anything," he said quickly. "Whatever you need. I want you to look around this dining room and tell me what you see." Marcus's eyes darted nervously around the restaurant. "I see customers enjoying their meals." "Look closer," Ronda encouraged. "Really look at them." Marcus forced himself to focus, scanning the faces of the diners. At table 12, an elderly man in a worn but clean sweater was celebrating what appeared to be an anniversary with his wife. At table 7, a young woman in scrubs, clearly a nurse or doctor coming off a long shift, was treating herself to a solo dinner. Near the window, a family with teenage children was sharing what was obviously a special occasion meal. The parents dressed nicely, but not expensively. "I see different kinds of people," Marcus said slowly, beginning to understand. "Exactly," Ronda said. "You see a retired teacher celebrating 50 years of marriage with his wife. You see a pediatric nurse who just finished a 16-hour shift saving children's lives. You see a family celebrating their daughter's acceptance to college, a daughter who will be the first in her family to attend university." Marcus's face grew paler with each description as he realized how wrong his assumptions had been. "Every person in this restaurant has a story," Ronda continued. "They have struggles, triumphs, dreams, and fears. They've chosen to spend their hard-earned money here, trusting us to provide them with not just a meal, but an experience. And your job, all of our jobs, is to honor that trust." Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of the moment. "Marcus, when I hired you, I thought I saw potential. You're knowledgeable about wine, you understand fine dining, and you can be charming when you want to be. But charm without character is worthless in this industry." "I know I messed up," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. I know I hurt people and I know I let the team down, but I want to learn. I want to be better. David, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up. Marcus, can you tell me why you think you behaved the way you did tonight? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with the question. I guess I thought that being exclusive meant being exclusionary. I thought that protecting the restaurant's reputation meant keeping certain people out. And where did that idea come from? Rhonda asked gently. I don't know, Marcus admitted. Maybe from other places I've worked, or from movies, or just from assumptions I made. I thought that's how upscale restaurants operated. Well, that's not how this restaurant operates, Rhonda said firmly. Excellence isn't about excluding people. It's about exceeding expectations for everyone who walks through our doors. She paused, looking around at the staff members who had gathered to witness this conversation. I want everyone to hear this, because it's important. Our success isn't measured by how many people we turn away, but by how many people we welcome and serve with distinction. A young server named Maria stepped forward hesitantly. Ms. Rousey, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you tell us who you were when you came in? Why did you let this happen? Rhonda smiled at the question. Because I needed to know who we really are when we think no one is watching. It's easy to provide excellent service when you know the owner is present. The real test is how you treat people when you think it doesn't matter. But it always matters, Sarah added, understanding dawning in her voice. Exactly, Rhonda confirmed. Every interaction matters, every customer matters, every moment is an opportunity to either build our reputation or damage it. Marcus looked up from where he'd been staring at his hands. What can I do to make this right? That's the right question, Rhonda said, and for the first time that evening, her voice carried a note of approval. But before we talk about making it right, I need to know that you truly understand what went wrong. I judged you, Marcus said quietly. I made assumptions based on how you looked and how you were dressed. I treated you like you didn't belong here, like you weren't worthy of respect. And, Marcus thought harder, knowing there was more to it, and I did it because I thought I was better than you. I thought my position here gave me the right to decide who deserved good treatment and who didn't. That's closer to the truth, Rhonda acknowledged, but there's still something missing. Marcus struggled with the question, his face showing the effort of real self-reflection. Finally, David offered a hint. Marcus, think about the other complaints Sarah mentioned. What do they all have in common? The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. They were all people I thought couldn't hurt me, people I thought didn't have power or influence. I was nice to the people in expensive clothes because I thought they mattered, and I was rude to everyone else because I thought they didn't. And what does that say about your character? Rhonda asked, though her tone was more sad than angry. That I don't have any, Marcus whispered. That I'm a coward who only shows respect when I think I have to. The honesty of his admission hung in the air, raw and painful. Several of the staff members looked uncomfortable, perhaps recognizing similar tendencies in themselves. The good news, Rhonda said after a moment, is that character can be developed. It's not something you're born with or without. It's something you choose, every day, in every interaction. She turned to address the entire group. I want everyone to understand something. This restaurant exists because I believe in the power of hospitality to bring people together, to create moments of joy and connection, and to treat every human being with dignity and respect. That's not just our business model, it's our mission. A young hostess named Jennifer raised her hand tentatively. Ms. Rousey, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Excellent question, Rhonda replied. Sarah, what do you think? Sarah straightened, clearly taking the question seriously. We need better training, obviously, but more than that, we need to create a culture where this kind of behavior is unthinkable. How do we do that? David asked, genuinely curious. We start by leading by example, Rhonda said. Every manager, every senior staff member, every person in a position of authority needs to demonstrate the values we want to see. She looked directly at Marcus. And we hold each other accountable, not to punish, but to help each other grow. Marcus looked up hopefully. Does that mean, am I getting another chance? Rhonda was quiet for a long moment, weighing her decision carefully. Marcus, I'm going to offer you something that most people in your position wouldn't get. I'm going to give you a choice. A choice. You can resign tonight with a neutral reference and 2 weeks severance pay. No hard feelings, no black mark on your record. You can start fresh somewhere else and hopefully apply what you've learned here. Marcus's face fell, but Rhonda held up a hand. Or, she continued, you can stay and prove that you're capable of change. But if you choose to stay, there will be conditions. What kind of conditions? Marcus asked, hope creeping back into his voice. First, you'll be on probation for 6 months. Any customer complaint during that time, and you're gone immediately. Second, you'll attend customer service training, not just our standard training, but additional courses on hospitality and cultural sensitivity. Third, you'll spend 1 day each week working in different positions throughout the restaurant, kitchen prep, dishwashing, hosting, so you understand every aspect of what we do here. Marcus nodded eagerly. I'll do all of that, I promise. I'm not finished, Rhonda said firmly. Fourth, you'll write a personal letter of apology to every customer who filed a complaint about your service. And fifth, you'll mentor new employees on customer service, because sometimes the best teachers are people who've learned from their own mistakes. The conditions were extensive, and everyone could see that Rhonda was offering Marcus a genuine opportunity for redemption, while also ensuring that he would be held accountable for his actions. Those are the terms, Rhonda said. Take a few minutes to think about it, and let Sarah know your decision before you leave tonight. Marcus nodded, clearly overwhelmed by the gravity of the choice before him. Rhonda turned to address the rest of the staff. I want everyone to know that what happened here tonight is not typical of this restaurant or its employees. Sarah runs an excellent operation, and most of you consistently provide the kind of service that makes me proud to be your owner. She paused, making eye contact with each person. But I also want you to know that I'll be visiting regularly, sometimes announced, sometimes not. Not to catch you doing something wrong, but to celebrate you doing things right. Will you tell us when you're coming? Jennifer asked. Rhonda smiled. Sometimes. But remember, the goal isn't to perform for me when I'm here. The goal is to be excellent all the time, because that's who we are. David stepped forward. I think this has been an important evening for all of us. We've seen what can happen when we lose sight of our values, but we've also seen the power of accountability and second chances. Speaking of second chances, Rhonda said, I want to share something with all of you. When I was fighting professionally, I lost fights, I made mistakes, I had moments when I wasn't the person I wanted to be. But I learned that failure isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning of the next chapter. She looked around the room, seeing nods of understanding and appreciation. This restaurant is my next chapter. It's my way of creating something positive in the world, something that brings people together and makes them feel valued. But I can't do that alone. I need all of you to share that vision and help make it reality. Marcus approached Sarah quietly. I've made my decision, he said. I want to stay. I want to prove that I can be better. Sarah nodded and turned to Rhonda. Marcus has chosen to accept your conditions. Good, Rhonda said simply. Then we'll start fresh tomorrow. Sarah, please set up the additional training we discussed. And Marcus, I want to see that first apology letter by the end of the week. You'll have it, Marcus promised. As the group began to disperse, returning to their duties, Rhonda remained at the bar with David and Sarah. The restaurant was returning to its normal rhythm, but there was a different energy in the air, a sense of purpose and renewed commitment. "That was well handled," David said quietly. "You could have just fired him." "I could have," Rhonda agreed, "but sometimes the harder path is the right path. If Marcus can truly change, he'll become a better employee and a better person. And everyone else will see that we're serious about our values while also believing in redemption." Sarah looked thoughtful. "Do you think he'll make it through the probation period?" "I don't know," Rhonda admitted, "but I think he deserves the chance to find out. And if he doesn't make it, at least we'll know we gave him every opportunity to succeed." As the evening wound down, Rhonda finished her wine and prepared to leave. She had accomplished what she'd set out to do. She'd seen her restaurant through the eyes of a regular customer, identified areas for improvement, and handled a difficult situation with both firmness and compassion. "Sarah," she said as she gathered her things, "thank you for how you handled tonight. Your professionalism and integrity are exactly what this place needs." "Thank you for trusting me with this opportunity," Sarah replied. "And thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like." As Rhonda walked toward the exit, she noticed that several customers were watching her with curiosity and respect. Word had clearly spread throughout the dining room about what had transpired, and she could see approval in their faces. At the door, she turned back for one last look at her restaurant. The elegant dining room, the bustling kitchen visible through the pass, the staff moving with renewed purpose. It was everything she had dreamed it could be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to live up to the standards they had set tonight. But for now, she was content knowing that Le Jardin was more than just a restaurant. It was a place where people could come together, where everyone was treated with dignity, and where second chances were possible for those willing to earn them. The story of the night would undoubtedly spread throughout the Beverly Hills restaurant community, serving as both a cautionary tale and an inspiration. But more importantly, it had strengthened the foundation of values upon which Le Jardin was built, ensuring that every future customer would receive the respect and excellence they deserved. As Rhonda stepped out into the cool Los Angeles evening, she smiled, knowing that she had not only built a successful business, but had also created a place where her values could flourish and inspire others to be their best selves. What did you think of this incredible story of respect, redemption, and second chances? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination based on appearance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing your perspectives. If this story moved you and you want to see more inspiring tales like this, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Your support means everything to us and helps us continue bringing you these powerful stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if it made you think differently about how we treat others. It really helps our channel grow and reach more people who need to hear these important messages.